Hello and welcome to my spoiler vlog for The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is Mistborn, book number 7. I'm going to be talking about all of my thoughts and feelings as I read this book, so without further ado, I can't wait to start this. As soon as I started reading this prelude with Wayne's mother telling him the story, I was like, that's how Wayne became a lawman, and this is going to break my heart. And then sure enough, until the next day when there was a collapse at the mine, that night his ma didn't come home. But the dialogue in this already has captured me, so I am straight into this book. I'm loving it already. I actually can't remember what happened in the previous book because I read it so long ago now, and I probably should have done my reread in time to get to this book, but I just didn't have time to. So I hope this kind of takes me by the hand a little bit in terms of introducing me, and that way I don't feel so alienated from reading this, even though I really want to remember everything. Inevitably, I'm going to reread this at some point anyway, so if I don't catch everything in my first read through, it doesn't matter, but I'm just here for the ride. Here is a bit of insight. It says they'd been working together for almost 6 years now, since Wax's retirement following the discovery of the Bands of Mourning. I actually don't remember what the Bands of Mourning are, which is probably a bad thing given that it was the title of the previous book. But Marazi is talking, so it's Marazi and Wayne, and they are in a sewer. You don't know why, but I remember that Marazi is the one who could make time slow for who was with her, and then it would just go on as normal around her. And then it says that Wayne is also a constable, like an official officer, I guess, so an official lawman finally, which is probably what his mother was trying to push him to do the right thing. I also forgot who Milan was, but I think she's one of the characters that can shift. I've forgotten what they're called. And apparently she's dating Wayne because Wayne says, I think Milan is going to break up with me. That's why maybe I've been uncharacteristically downbeat in my general disposition as of late. So it starts naturally on the down, and we're going to build and build and build. I'm already getting reacquainted with everybody, and we're only 15 pages, so this is doing very well at keeping me up to date, even though I haven't read what I should and done my reread. So I'm quite happy so far, but I might just read some more and then come and sit in front of the camera later. Otherwise I'm going to destroy my battery. Literally as I stopped recording, Marazi gave us a summary of what has previously happened and gives us an indication of the timeline as well. So she says that they are finding answers, or they're trying to find answers, and they're trying to catch the right people because they're hunting, I think, like a secret big bad called the Set. I think they're an organization, or so we are led to believe, and they're working for somebody named Trell, who is, I think, a god, or seemingly a god. And it says here on chapter 17, the closest she'd gotten to answers, which is Marazi, had been 6 years ago, but then everyone they'd captured, including Wax's uncle, had been killed in an explosion, leaving her to chase at shadows again, and the rest of Elendel's elite fully committed to ignoring the threat. Without evidence, she and Wax had been unable to prove that the Set even existed beyond Edwin's lackeys. So they're trying to prove this secret business exists. And I think that's why her and Wax are in the sewer right now, trying to find a little underground set of allomancers. Also, as a side note, the group used to be run, that group used to be run by Wax's uncle, and now it involves his sister as well, Telson. And then they worshipped or followed a dark figure known as Trell, a god she thought from ancient times. That's what Marazi said. So I'm assuming this has something to do with the whole lore around the Cosmere, which is going to be pretty cool to uncover. Wow, okay, I'm 22 pages in now and I have notes because initially reading about the politics and reading about Wax as a politician, it kind of confused me because I'm used to seeing Wax as like basically a cowboy lawmaker, a rebel against the law, if you will, fighting for good. So the fact that he's now a politician and he's trying to oppose a particular bill, it confused me a little bit, but now I know what's going on. I'm in the story, I'm in. He is basically trying to stop a civil war from breaking out between the outer cities and Elendel the Basin. And so he's tried to influence all these politicians along the way so that they vote for a particular side of this bill that's coming forward. So if this bill passes, it means that Elendel and Malwish, my brain was like malware, that's not right. Elendel and Malwish, they are the two places, so a city and then a city in the southern continent. They once granted more power by voting this bill in. It means that they can effectively duke it out against each other and do whatever they want, and it takes out all all of the other people that might oppose them, like mayors and such. So it gives it basically elevates the power to just them. So they don't want to disperse power and have a representative for each place in the outer cities. They're like, no, we want control. So there is potentially a civil war brewing, and Wax suspects the involvement of the Set, which Marazi and Wayne are obviously helping him try and prove that they are real based on what happened about 6 years ago in the previous book. They're trying to stop a civil war from breaking out and uncover the conspiracies that the Set are trying to push forward, and the Set are acting on instructions from Trell, which is like a godly figure. I think I'm getting it all underway now. Also, I was really emotional because Wax has a daughter named Tindwyl. That's a nice little Easter egg. And also Wax and Steris have a son. I didn't think that they would be a good pairing when I started the series, but I actually really like them together now. Although I do find that Brandon sometimes struggles with his character work, especially in relationships, but he has said that that is kind of where his weakness lies. So I like that the characters are presenting as like a united front and a duo and a family. I think he's grown much more as a writer, especially in his dialogue. It really conveys a lot of character, whereas before it was great, don't get me wrong, but you can just see how far he's grown from the previous work that he's written. And then of course there would not be a story if civil war didn't happen. So when it got to page 22 and it said the bill passed, his stomach fell further. If Wax was going to stop a civil war, he'd need to find another way. I'm like, of course he needs to find another way, because I want some cool action scenes with allomancy, please. So let's get into this. Let's go. It is like 9 o'clock at night, but I need to tell you about this theory I have before I read further, because I don't think I'm going to have an opportunity to vlog in the next few days, and I'm going to be doing hopefully a lot of reading. I'm on 75 pages of this book, and I think Brandon is setting up the beginning to describe Wayne and his backstory about being a good person to mean that later on he's probably going to die in the ending and do like a noble sacrifice thing. I think something bad is going to happen to Wayne, and I am not prepared. I've now read 140 pages, but I'd like to jump back to page 116 where Brandon is talking about Steris and her anxiety, because I liked some of the quotes that were in there, so I've captured one or two. One of them was that some of her preparations went beyond helpful. Understanding that line was vital to understanding herself. That was on page 114. And I really love the way he's captured anxiety in his character of Steris. I think it's very true to everyday life. I just really liked it. It really resonated with me. Then there was another moment with Vandel, who is a Kundra. That is the word I couldn't think of before. Vandel had some comment about wanting to buy Wax's bones after Wax had died, and Wax is like, no, and just dismisses him every time. But Steris is like, yes. And she said, I can use the money now, not when I'm dead. And it makes me think that, is Steris going to be a somehow recurring character? Is this foreshadowing? Is a Steris going to exist like in the Cosmere in the far off future? Does this mean that she's being foreshadowed to die? I already think that Wayne is going to die. Like, one of the cast is going to die, and I think it's going to be Wayne. He has all that money, and it really surprised me. I'd forgotten that he was basically a millionaire, which seemed particularly random. Like, the two guys in bowler hats who are following him aren't actually asking him for money. They're not loan sharks. They're saying, how do you want to invest all this money that you've got? Which is a great subversion. Again, I'm on a tangent though, bringing it back. It also is wild to me that Wax is now 50. That's not old, but it's also older than we started him in this series as, so it's just crazy for me to think about. Anyway, speaking of Wax, jumping to page 136 in my UK edition, which I'm not holding up and I'll go and get. We just had a conversation occur between Wax and Harmony, and in that conversation you got more of an understanding of the overarching plot, because Harmony said that he was blinded by what another god and what Wax's sister are getting up to. We've got the god of autonomy, and then we've got Telsin, who is Wax's sister, and she seems to want to bring back the Ash Mounts, and they think they're going to do that, or they think Telsin, who is the leader of the Set, is going to come about organising that by setting off a bomb in the basin in Elendil. And they obviously want to prevent that, but Wax has now realised, going through these articles with Steris, that this plan goes back to like 6 years ago, when they first had kids, and it has been bubbling under the surface ever since, and they've done test explosions underneath populated areas, and so they're really escalating everything, and the crew are realizing what their plan is, probably too late for them to necessarily stop it, which is interesting of itself. And then obviously it wouldn't be a story like the beginning with the Civil War. It would not be a story if Wax just sat on the sidelines. So this is the unwilling hero being called to arms, which is a trope that I absolutely love, because Wax agreed to be Harmony's sword. Maybe Wax dies. At this point, I'm just really concerned for all of the characters, because this is the last book, so all bets are off. All hats are off. Wayne be in fear. On page 136, Harmony says, Autonomy mobilizes an army from off-world to invade and destroy everyone on this planet. Telsin moves to circumvent that. Both plans are catastrophic to us and both are in motion. So it sounds like Autonomy is working with Telsin, but they've also got their own, obviously, autonomous plans for what they want to eventuate. So maybe that is going to be their fracturing point. But we've got this whole discussion of the Cosmere happening as well, and Milan has said that she's going to go off-world on a mission, so she's going to traverse Shadesmar and the Cosmere, which is so exciting to me because I really want a Kandra or a Kandra to appear maybe like in Stormlight or something. That would be epic. This book keeps messing with my white balance. I might just put it behind me. We've also had confirmation here that Trell, who is working with the set to invest the metals with like a godly power. He is a shard of Adonalsium, who was like the god of the Cosmere, and all of the shattered shards landed on different planets and made up the universes. So Harmony, I think, is a shard, like he is invested with some godly power, and so he's become a god. So basically we've got Wax agreeing to be Harmony's sword again. We've got Wax also having children now with Steris, and Steris is anxious but also not willing to be an obstacle to Wax. She doesn't want to stand in his way. She wants to support what he does, but also she recognizes that that comes with danger. I don't know where that bird is. Of course it stops. And then we've got Steris and her sister Marazi. I think they're half sisters, but they are building up their relationship, which is great to see. And they've got this mutual understanding and respect of each other now. Then there's Wayne, who is heartbroken because Milan just broke up with him because she's lived for hundreds of years. And he thought this relationship would be a bit more permanent than it was, because he goes all into a relationship, he said. It's all of his heart. And so he's very heartbroken at the moment. And he's trying to address the trauma from his past where he couldn't actually hold guns anymore. It's gotten to a point now where he can actually hold a weapon, not fire one, but hold one. And I reckon this is partly foreshadowing as well, because I think that Wayne is probably going to fire a gun. And I think he's going to either take a bullet, fire a gun, and then save the plot of the story or someone significant. I think something is going to happen with Wayne, a gun, and sacrifice. I'm calling it now, and I'm very, very nervous, because Wayne is that character that I don't like reading about if he's the main character, but he supports everybody else and he adds a levity that everybody needs, and it makes everybody get along, and he's kind of like the glue. So if he goes, I'm going to be shattered. I would like to continue upon my theory about Wayne. I don't think he necessarily is just going to die. I think that he might become a Kandra somehow, because Kandra, I think, were created, the lore escapes me, I can't remember, but I feel like Wayne's propensity for impressions that have been mentioned multiple times now, like it's been reiterated in the narrative, I think that combined with his Furochemy skills and his healing ability, I feel like the spikes, the impressions, and his healing ability are going to somehow combine in this, where he is on the brink of death, but he comes back, and he comes back as a Kandra, and then him and Milan go off-world, because that would be cool. But that might be an outlandish theory, but I can see something foreshadowed, and I don't know what it is. Like, I need to put my finger on this, but at the same time, if I think about it too hard, it's not going to plot twist me. So I need to just read instead of over-analyzing, I think. I am now on page 240, which is just before I start part 3. And I did not expect Marsh to come back. I probably should have, but I don't really remember too much about past events. But I forgot that Marazi and the other characters view him as death. I don't really know how that came to pass, but he said that he takes atium in order to stay alive, and it seemed like when we left him with Wax that he was dying. So that's not really clear to me as to why. But he mentioned that him, and then 2 others of the original crew were still around. And I'm assuming that means Kelsier in his kind of ghost state, as well as Tensoon the Kendra. So it's pretty cool to see that we've got Wax, obviously of Waxilium Ladrian, who is linked to the bloodline of the original crew as well. And then Harmony obviously is Sazed, and we're now getting cool Cosmere world building stuff happening, and Duralium has come back, which is what Vin used in the first era. It's just really cool with the world building, and I feel like for some reason I should know who Moonlight is, who is Kim as well, and helping Marazi, and she is like a following of the survivor. She's got the tattoo of like the 3 diamond symbol that is the tattoo and the symbol of the survivor. So I feel like the survivor or the survival crew or whatever they're called, they're like a secret, not a cult, because that has negative connotations, but they're like a secret crew that are helping facilitate and kind of save things about the Cosmere that are good and fight against beings like Trell, who are wanting to basically be destructive and blow this planet up, essentially. So it's cool to see the workings of the Cosmere coming to play in this book, but it also makes me regret the fact that I didn't do my reread. So I think upon a reread, even after I finish this book and I know I'm really enjoying it, I'm probably going to get so much more out of it the second time through that I read Era 2, because I don't think I've reread it, or at least touched upon it in a long time. This is just, in summation, a really cool way to bring back the events of 300 years ago when they're talking about the ash mounts and everything, and to bring like a skeleton of the old crew back so that they can kind of work in the background while our new characters put things into action. It's just a really cool format that I'm really enjoying, although I really am worried about Wayne. I think that for some reason his fortune, because I forgot that he was a millionaire, I think his fortune is going to go into the efforts of rebuilding the city. So I think something is going to occur there, because why mention and foreshadow that he's got so much money without doing something with it later? He seems to be one of the initial buyers or supporters of electricity, and he's got stocks in it. So I'm assuming that something happens in this book, or at least in this series, maybe closer to the end, that will be mentioned later in like Era 3 or something. It's a really cool foundation, and Brandon is really, really clever. So I have no doubt that he's setting up little clues for later, as well as setting up clues just for this book as well. Just before I go, it is important to note that Wax and Wayne have split off, and then Marazi and Kim, or Moonlight, have also split off. So Marazi is viewing this as the opportunity to get a lot more information out of Moonlight, because Moonlight works for the survivor crew. She's got the survivor tattoo. You know what I mean? And so Marazi's trying to get more information out of her on the down low, because she's not telling Wax who Moonlight is. And that makes me think that she's somehow linked to like the Cosmere overall. Like I feel like I should know her either from Stormlight or from Warbreaker or Elantris or something, but I don't recognize her swear word, which is night. I don't recognize it. I feel like I should, but I don't. So maybe it hasn't been properly introduced, or it was in a novella or something and I just don't remember. And I like how she can kind of disguise herself, but Wayne can see through it and he suspects her of something, but not sinister, just untoward. I'm really enjoying myself, but I have to go to bed. I just reached chapter 39 and I started losing my mind because Cosmere stuff is happening. Marazi and Moonlight have just walked into a safe house of the survivor, and I am convinced that Marazi is going to meet Kelsier, which is really cool. But this woman named Codenames is talking to Moonlight as kind of like a talking at her as she realizes things and not realizing that Marazi is also there. And so she's like, Moonlight, you have to read this. Travel to Benjel has been completely upset. That's 4 primary systems we can't visit without extreme danger. If you count Rosha, I've said it for years, the perpendicularities are no longer viable. They never were good for mass transportation or commerce, no matter how hard those fools on Nalthus try. We need a different... The woman trailed off. Rosha! I'm so excited! There is so much happening in this that is world building that you're just like taking as little crumbs as you rush through the story in a good way. I like how fast paced it is, and Brandon is like, Cosmere for you, Cosmere for you, Cosmere for you, and not really explaining a lot unless there are things that are like Easter eggs that I've missed. Kelsier has made an appearance just as like a ghostly orb, and Marazi has talked to him, and he's basically given the entire cell instructions, and so they are the Ghost Bloods and they're working for the survivor, and Marazi is maybe going to join. She probably will join them so she can go off-world in the Cosmere. Maybe her and Wayne go off on an adventure, because he did make a comment to her before Wayne and Wax split up, and then Marazi and Moonlight split up and they went separate ways. Wayne was like, I've worked with you for 6 years and now we're going our separate ways almost. So it'd be cool to see them come back together and then go off-world in the Cosmere. Probably after we get an emotional punch of Wayne being on the brink of death. That is my prediction, I suppose. And it's seeming more and more likely the further I read that it's kind of being foreshadowed. I feel like something is coming and Sanderson is going to do his classic Sanderlange and punch me in the gut several times. I can just see it coming. Kelsier also says a lot of things that confuse me. He's like, take the stores of purified door, which is DOR with a capital D. The command is respect. Authorize the other cells to access theirs as well and pass the command, capital C, to them. And then Moonlight has gone to a safe and put her hand on it and said, respect me. And then the lock, which is an identity lock and can recognize somebody's intent. Maybe it's also invested, I'm not sure. It's opened for her. So this is all really cool magic that has just gone over my head in terms of world building, but I feel like it's going to be explained at some point. It's just not being explained now. Also, just jumping a little bit backwards, because in a previous chapter with Steris going to talk to all of the council members that are like the higher council, she figured out which one of them was a Kandra, and Tensoon has shown his face. So now we've got Tensoon, we've got Sazed, who is Harmony, and we've had Kelsier, and we've also had Marsh in his own way as well. So we've had all of these characters rise again after being in Mistborn Era 1, and I don't know what Kelsier has organised about the Cosmere behind the scenes this entire time, but it has obviously been several hundred years coming, and that really excites me, especially since they mentioned Rosha. Like, I would love to see crossovers occurring. That would be incredible. I'm now on page 280, and Marazi, Moonlight, and Kelsier's new cell or crew or whoever they are, they're all going to the factory, which is like a tire factory cover, and they think the set have been using that to smuggle things in and then down into the caverns, so they can kind of prepare for their apocalypse that they are trying to encourage by dropping a bomb on Elendil. And then we've got Wax and Wayne, and they are finding the mayor, who they think is linked to the set. So they're trying to find him and interrogate him because he's like the weak link. Or actually no, they're not trying to interrogate him, they're trying to break in and find some stuff that he has probably left out in the open, and they're going to use that as trying to get some more information. While they're doing that, Steris has isolated Tensoon on the High Council. So I feel like all of the pieces are moving into position, and this last chunk of the book is going to be absolutely bananas. This is such a cool way to conclude a series, having your characters fight characters almost identical to them but switched around. It feels so epic. It's kind of like Brandon gave us, here, have a treat of Wax climbing the staircase and fighting all the soldiers, and now this is the real meal. Wayne and Wax have just switched weapons mid-combat, and it's said that Wayne is now shooting Wax's gun at Wax's double, and it's like Wax smiled at the sound. It was in some ways silly to enjoy hearing his friend fire the gun, but it wasn't the action that mattered, it was the wound that had finally healed. So with doing that, Wayne is now ahead of his double, because she is just convinced that he likes pain based on their conversation from under the sewer. And this whole time with autonomy, she kind of has this concept of you need to become the better version of yourself. And I feel like because Wayne and Wax have had all this character growth, they are naturally the better versions of these four. So obviously these two doubles are set up to lose from the beginning with their character development, I mean, in Autonomy's viewpoint. So with all of that world building in mind, I'm really interested to see how this fight is going to play out. Wayne and not Wax were just in the air, and Wayne threw away his metal vial. And I thought that was the moment, because it said all went black. I was like, Wayne's died. He's died. Wayne blinked open his eyes and groaned. The healing he'd stored had been enough, barely. He rolled over and looked at the coin shot's crumpled, broken body. This close. But now he's got no healing left, so I've still got pages. That worries me. They've just realised that the bomb is not in the tower, it is on the ship, and Telson has been cut off by Harmony. So I think her body has been overtaxed, and it didn't really say that she died, but I think she has. Either way, Wax and Wayne have moved on from her and they have redirected their focus to the bomb and trying to stop it, while Steris and Tensoon are trying to clear everybody out of the city. And I like as a little Easter egg that Tensoon growls and is kind of like beast-like because he used to be a dog when he was with Vin. I think it's a nice little touch. And at one point in one of the broadsheet inserts that we get in here, there was a little plush toy that people in that world could buy, and at the top it was like a zip pocket, which is just a really cool and funny Easter egg. I would like to point out that one of them got spiked. Dawnshot flung wide his mist coat, revealing what had been obscured before, a large metal spike protruding from his lower chest, where it had been pounded right through his clothing to pierce him directly between two ribs. I thought Wayne was going to get spiked, but I predicted that one of them did. I'm on to you, Sanderson. I knew they'd use Duralium. That's what the spike is granting. Wayne has just pushed Wax off the boat, and I think Sazed and Kelsier have joined him in their forms. A figure, mostly transparent, stood beside him, a tall bald man, Terrace, and another darker fellow stood behind him. Not in the skin tone sense or anything, like this other one was a shadow. It mimicked Harmony as he held out his hands to Wayne. I think my prediction is coming true, and I don't want it to come true. The explosion just happened, and then Hoyt appeared for Wax and said, "Carriage for you, sir." With that, Wayne stretched into another place, into another time. He stretched into the wind and into the stars and all endless things. I just finished The Lost Metal and it made me incredibly emotional. I'm obviously sad that Wayne died, but I think the way that it worked in the plot and with the characters, it was all believable. And I think that is a clever way to get rid of a character. So I highly respect this book, even though I'm sad. And I love that there are threads for what is happening in the future. Marazi is going to become a governor. At least she wants to. And then we've got Kelsier talking with Sazed and they're saying, don't fight me on what I've chosen to do. And Sazed is like, that all depends on the decisions that you make. We've got Wax as well, who's with Steris, and they're looking at the statue of Wayne that has been put up in the middle of the city. And so I think based on the discussion that Kelsier was having with Sazed, he was pleading for some technological advancement very quickly because he's saying we don't have decades left. We don't have the time. We need you to intervene the way that autonomy intervenes and rapidly enhances people's understanding of technology and production. So I think that the next era won't be set 300 years in the future. I think it will be set in a time where some of these characters may either still be alive or just maybe very old. But we've also got Wax's son Max, so maybe Max would be part of it as well. And also Tin Bull, Wax and Steris' daughter, which would be cool to see as well. And I think the discovery of the metal, Lauralium, that made people into Mistborn, that's what made Ellen into a Mistborn in Era 1. That's what made Wayne into a Mistborn at the end of this book. I think that is going to be touched upon more so in the future. And I think it is going to be the linchpin with figuring out how Kelsier deviates from the set. I feel like he's on such a line right now because as much as he wants to succeed, he wants the same things that the set do. But Sazed brought up a good point with the Terrace and said forcibly making people develop in a particular way is eugenics. Like, you don't have to be Terrace to know that that's bad. And I think that's a very important topic of conversation because Kelsier wants to do the right thing and hopefully that doesn't get blurred. He also wants to be a Mistborn again and he can't activate metals. So it depends on what his desperation will override for him, which is very interesting because he's supposed to be good, but he might not end up becoming good. But also I didn't think that Marsh had died because we never saw a body. And at the end, it's confirmed that he didn't die. There are lots of little threads in here that are going to continue the series. Obviously, I'm very heartbroken about Wayne, but I think this is an excellent conclusion to a series. I definitely loved it. So thank you so much for sticking with this entire vlog. Leave me some blue heart emojis in the comments and thank you so much again for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.